Hello, I'm Christopher Bayliss from FastGrowth Online. Thank you for downloading the FastGrowth workbook entitled Build Your Powerful Belief About Your Company's Goals. Today I'm joined by Jane Bishop from Bonlack and Bishop. Thank you, Jane, for giving up your precious time from a busy day.
No problem. Happy to be here.
Good. What we're going to do today, Jane, is two things. We're going to set the context of why building your powerful belief is so important to any business that wants to grow, and hear perhaps about how you've used it. And secondly, we're going to talk about a couple of hints to help our viewers use this workbook. Okay with that?
Fantastic.
Take
Thank
about
you.
8 or 9 minutes.
Lovely.
So before we start, can you just share with our viewers what your firm or company does, please?
Yes, certainly. We are a law firm, so we deal with property, we deal with matrimonial matters and so on and so forth. But the other aspect to this company is that we also deal with some niche services. So, for example, we have lease extension and various other departments. We have 78 websites, which means that we can trade nationally on those particular specialties, and that works really well for us. So we're a law firm with a difference. Okay,
and approximately how many employees have you got?
We have a number of consultants working with us now, so we're around 60, including part-timers, yes.
Super. And what's your role?
My role is practice director. I have a very operational role here, so I take responsibility for compliance and for finance and HR and so on and so forth and premises. We have a number of officers in the area. And in the last couple of years, I've extended my role into business development. So I'm now starting to work with other groups who need to do business with legal services on a regular basis. For example, the military is probably my biggest growth area.
Okay. And your husband, Tim Bishop, is senior partner.
He is.
In this business.
He is.
So you work closely with him.
Very closely.
Yeah. So this workbook is entitled Build Your Powerful Belief About Your Company Goals. Could you just read for our viewers from the title page what the outcome of this workbook is?
Happy to. The desired outcome is that at the end of this workbook, you build a positive, powerful belief about your company goals. The objective for you is that within 6 months you make measurable progress towards achieving your business goals.
Okay, thanks, Jane. I'm going to give an example of this from outside of your company, and then we'll come back to your company if I may. There are many examples around the world of people, entrepreneurs, who are household names, who have fantastic high self-belief and have achieved amazing things. In this country, perhaps our most famous example is Sir Richard Branson with the Virgin Group. But the one I've selected today is this gentleman here, not a household name. His name is Jamal Edwards. And if you can see from that photograph there, Jane, he's about 26. He was born and bred in Luton. His father worked in the car industry, and then the parents split up. And Jamal and his brothers and sisters were brought up in the very poor part of London. Okay, and from about the age of 16. Get the idea? Yeah. And he's now 26. And this book, which came out last year, sold a lot of copies already. It's called Self-Belief, The Vision. It's somewhat related. And what's interesting about Jamal, he's built a video business, huge video business from nothing, absolutely nothing. So before we start looking at the workbook, Jane, can you give us an example from your own company, your own experience of how important belief is?
I would have to focus on the importance of the relationship between myself and Tim Bishop. As Christopher said, he's the senior partner. Having a family business puts pressures on a number of levels. As you can imagine, and you may yourself be a family person, you have the pressures that any business brings, and you also have the interaction of those pressures with the domestic life.
And you have children?
We have 2 children, yes. And the reality is everything that we do in this business is to create stability, wealth and happiness for our family.
Yeah, and you experienced this workbook about 3 years ago,
Yeah,
didn't you?
I did.
In a slightly different context.
Yes.
And I know you've used it. I know Tim, your husband,
Yes,
has used it.
Absolutely.
So thank you for sharing that deeply personal thing. So this is really at the bedrock of, if you want to grow a business fast, build your powerful self-belief. There is a sister workbook to it, which I'll just show at this moment in time. It's called Develop Your Winning Attitude. So build a belief and then develop your winning attitude. And I do recommend, if you've downloaded this one on Build Your Belief, also then download the winning attitude. Both take about an hour to do, but the combination is very, very powerful.
Absolutely. Okay.
Shall we have a look at the workbook and
Yes.
maybe some hints to help our viewer do it? I'm going to skip some pages because some are to do with setting goals, etc. Hint number 1 is really starts on page 2. Which is entitled, as you can see at the top there, page 2, Identify a Critical Limiting Belief. All individuals, companies and indeed countries have limiting belief. So some examples there at the top there. Could you just read a couple for our viewers?
Examples of limiting beliefs. I'm not a completer finisher. Or I'm just an accountant doing what other accountants do. Or no one can do the job as well as me. Or selling is sleazy.
Those came from other business leaders, and I think you were there at the time. Yeah, it resonates with most people. So what it then says is identify an important limiting belief that you have about yourself. This start with you personally rather than the whole company. And then what is the impact of that limiting belief having on your performance? 3, what evidence do you have that this belief, and how can you challenge it? And then finally, what actions can you take? So it's an absolutely critical page. Start with that page and be honest with yourself, be objective, and do that. Then feel free to download more copies and use it with your team and so forth, but absolutely important. So hint number 2 is on page 3. It's entitled Assess the Impact of Discounting on Your Business Growth. Can I just ask you to read the top paragraph there, please?
Discounting is a process that occurs subconsciously and involves us minimizing or ignoring certain aspects in ourselves, in others, and in the situation. We do this to maintain and reinforce our beliefs. We just don't seem to notice the things that would lead us to change our minds and our behaviours. We filter the unthinkable out.
So how do we know it's happening in ourselves and others? Do you recognise any of the following behaviours in yourself and others, or your company as a whole, when introducing improvements and change? Fast growth is all about improvements and change. Doing nothing. Over-adapting. Agitation. Violence. Panic. Okay,
Definitely.
I think we've seen about that. And then, so what impact does this have on your business growth? During the deep recession, there was a lot of panic going on, wasn't there? Okay. And levels of discounting. We can discount at different levels to different degrees. In the situation, the problem does not exist. What problem? Significance, the impact of it. Okay, but so what? Solutions. There is no solution. That won't work. Self-esteem, self-doubt of skills. What can I do about it? And there's some examples there. So very important page. Take your time. This is the distillation of lots and lots of people's wisdom about this subject, all into 2 or 3 concentrated pages. Take your time to work through it. But I honestly believe that lack of self-belief is probably one of the biggest obstacles to achieving fast growth in any company.
And it comes out in those negative behaviours that means that we just never do the things that we know deep down we ought to do. But of course they're the hardest things sometimes.
They are. And finally, hint number 3, and the heart of this workbook, is build your positive belief. This is what the workbook's called. And there's a page there to actually pull it all together, steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, into a really positive belief. Really powerful. And I know you did this a couple of years ago, and I knew I do it a lot. In launching this new company, FastGrowth Online, I've used this workbook to build my belief, because a lot of people are saying, will this work? Why spend all this money? Why do this?
Oh yeah. And there are plenty of those people around, aren't there?
This workbook was co-created by a lady called Rosie Barford, who you've met. So thank you, Rosie. And at the bottom of the page is a quote that Rosie gave me from Christopher Reeve, my namesake. You remember, he was the actor who had a riding accident, broke his back, and was in a wheelchair. Unfortunately, sadly, he died a few years ago. But can I actually just read that one?
Of course, he played Superman.
You did, yes.
Harsher. So many of our dreams at first seem impossible. Then they seem improbable. And then when we summon the will, they soon become inevitable.
Just to sum up, of all the 50 workbooks, this is important. As the business leader, your belief, or self-belief if you prefer, and also your winning attitude is crucial to the success of any company. Jane, thank you so much for giving me your time and letting us use your beautiful boardroom. You've got some exciting plans for the future, both for your business and for your family.
Absolutely. It's all coming on nicely now. Boys are growing up and the business is really motoring. And we're very grateful to FastGrowth for that. Thank you, Christopher.